Good morning. Welcome to our scheduled audit committee. I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have a couple people that are just on their way in now. With me here on the dais is Park Board Commissioner Chris Meyer, Councilmember Jeremy Schrader. We'll soon be joined by Mr. Scott Neal, who's just getting in and finding a place to park here. It's been a snowy morning, and Councilmember Warsami will be here momentarily. So I'm going to ask that we adopt the agenda as before you. We have 3 audits to accept and discuss, and then we also have a closed session on PIMS, which is our Police Information System. So all those in favor of adopting the agenda, please signal by saying aye. 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 Opposed? That carries. Also before you are the minutes from our last meeting, which was actually back in October 15th of 2018. I did look over those at agenda setting. I don't have one in front of me right now, but I move to accept those minutes of our previous meeting. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. We have with us today all of our audit reports and all of those people that have been audited. So thank you for joining us. The first one is AEG and Target Center, our contract audit report. Thank you, Jeff Johnson, for being here. And I'll go ahead and start with you, Director Bigby.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano, Audit Committee member. I'm going to introduce Uget Esolat, our auditor, who actually was just offered the audit manager position. So congratulations, Uget. Uget is going to present the AEG audit report.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Esolat.
Thank you. Okay. Madam Chair, committee members, good morning. My name is Uget, and I'm here to present a summary of the result of the AEG audit. And please note that all findings, management action plans, and expected issue remediation dates have been discussed with both city management and AEG. The objective of the AEG contract management audit was to ensure that select clauses of the contract are abided by, evaluate the accuracy and completeness of AEG reporting, and assess the adequacy of the city's management of the contract. And our scope period was from April 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2018, to include both pre- and post-renovation data. The audit scope included 2 main processes. The contract management and oversight was one aspect of the processes we looked at, and the levy concessions. So levy is the company that AEG contracted with to provide food and beverage services to the arena. Our work on the contract management and oversight process included a review of AEG policy and procedures, service level agreements, expense management and financial reporting, and event booking. And our work on the levy concession included a review of SLA management and support for financial transactions. Three issues were noted as a result of this audit. 2 were rated moderate and 1 low. The 2 moderate issues include the following. The first one, which Lori Johnson will speak to, is we noted that the city does not perform a detailed financial review around the AEG Target Center contract compliance. And the second issue, which Jeff Johnson will speak to, is there's no centralized tracking and monitoring of issues or complaints received from multiple sources related to events at the Target Center. As far as the low-rated issue, it was relating to the fact that AEG did not have any or thorough documented policies and procedures in place currently.
Ms. Esolat, Just a quick question. If the city doesn't perform a detailed financial review on contract compliance, then what exactly is it that the city could audit about that? Or tell us a little bit about that process.
All right. Chair Palmisano, committee members, as part of the audit, we met with AG management and the city. We spoke with the city to understand what kind of financial reviews they do for AEG. And the city attends monthly meetings with AEG where AEG present financials to them. And due to the proprietary nature of the data, the city cannot take the data out of the meetings. They just are they're presented with the data that they can review. But we thought this was not enough review to make sure that there were no issues. So we performed detailed review of a sample of transactions, and we did not note any issues. So we are pretty comfortable that there were no issues, but we're just noting this as an issue, but because something could have happened and go unnoticed by the city. And city management agreed to the recommendation, and Lori will speak to that a little later. You're welcome. So the table is just summarizing the issues that I just mentioned. So I'm going to move over. And so as I just mentioned, issues were communicated to agent city management as appropriate, and management provided an action plan to remediate them. And we do not require any action plan for low-rated issues. So the next 4 slides just provide detail on management action plan for each issue, as well as target remediation dates and responsible parties. So I'm just gonna go over this.
Ms. Esolat,
Yeah.
could we go back to audit issue number 1?
Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure if you want to answer this question or Ms. Johnson. Will the new detailed financial review include monitoring of revenue trends and event bookings? That was one of the concerns that led us to embark on this audit.
Okay. I will have Lori Johnson come over to answer that question.
And just to set the stage for my colleagues that may not be as familiar with this, over the course of the last year, in 2017, City Council endorsed a significant amount of money to do renovations to the Target Center. And the reason that this audit happened was we want to know if we're getting our money's worth. It's the people's money, and we want to make sure that that this was a good investment. So that's kind of the initiative of why we embarked on this type of audit. Ms. Johnson.
Good morning, Chair Palmisano, committee members. Yes, we will look at trends, and in conjunction with Jeff Johnson, look at bookings. We as finance would not have as good an idea about the finance or the bookings as he would, but we will certainly look to see if we're on track with previous years, previous months of the same year, to determine if trends are throwing up any sorts of red flags that we should be looking at. And this is something where we are going to have to feel our way as well to determine how much data we can get and how we can look at that data. So we will definitely be monitoring those in conjunction both with internal audit and with Jeff Johnson as the contract manager for this contract.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other question before?
Any other questions from my colleagues?
Okay.
Nope, not right now. Scott Neal, who will be here momentarily, might have a couple questions, and
Okay.
then we'll just go back as he does. But
That's fine. Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay. All right, so this was just a summary of all the issues, and I will just turn it over to Lori again to just provide your comments you have, general, on the audit overall. And
Certainly. Thank you again, Chair Palmisano, committee members. Lori Johnson, Deputy Chief Finance Officer, here to talk about issue 1 and how finance will address that. And we will engage in an annual detailed financial audit of AEG. We will use our finance manager in the internal control division of our controllers area. We intend to look at the finances very thoroughly. We'll look for trends, red flags, any irregularities that we find. As we find those, we'll of course engage the internal audit division, our department as well, to assist us with that auditing component. And as needed, we would engage the attorney's office or the city coordinator's office. And as I mentioned previously, we will also work closely with Jeff Johnson as he has a finger on this contract. And we will begin that process soon, and we will, as the report says, have some sort of resolution to that by the August date of August 2019. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Any further questions? Not for you. I do want to invite up the audited party. So Jeff Johnson, if you want to come up and just speak a little bit to how did this audit go for you, your own take or, review as a client of this audit team. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Chair Palmisano. Committee members, again, I'm Jeff Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of the Minneapolis Convention Center, but also as part of my role with the city, I am the contract manager. I oversee AEG and their operations at the Target Center. So first of all, I want to thank the audit department for working with us and bringing this forward. I go back 3 auditors of asking for an audit of this relationship because it is so important to the city. And we wanted to make sure that everything was working well, that the relationship was well, that the contract was in a place where it needed to be. And so I'm glad to be here today and to have this information. And we knew that there would be improvements out of this, and we're happy to bring forward some ideas and make sure that this contract goes forward in a great way. So if we look at item number 2, as outlined in the report, it does deal with management of customer complaints. Currently, AEG receives a lot of inputs from different sources. They have a survey directly with Timberwolves and Lynx fans that they get feedback from, and then they also take feedback from members that are customers that are coming to events like concerts, Minnesota State High School League events. And they take those comments in various ways, either in person at the event or after the event, emails, phone calls, texts, social media. And so what the audit came forward and the internal audit department came forward and said that there really wasn't a centralized area where we could put all of that information together and then watch for trends. And so as part of our monthly management meeting, we will make sure that we bring all of that information together at the management meeting and talk about trends, talk about what we're seeing and where issues are, so that we can make sure that AEG is watching those customer service complaints or issues and resolving them going forward. So we think this will really do a good job of making sure that those issues come to the forefront. If I may, I know I don't have to talk on item number 3, but if I could.
Please do. Yep.
So this really deals with policies and procedures at the Target Center. And really, as we took a deeper dive into this relationship, we understood that at the Target Center, there's a lot of institutional knowledge. People have been there for a long time. And we knew that there were some upcoming retirements that were coming due, and plus there's been a lot of leadership change over at AEG in the last year to 6 months. And so we wanted to take that opportunity to really get some information down on paper and make sure that the policies and procedures for maintenance were something that we all had in writing, and we could get some of that institutional knowledge down on paper. And so that has started, and AEG is really taking that to heart and pushing forward. We do have another meeting that we attend monthly, and generally that meeting has been a capital and repair meeting. We are going to add these maintenance issues onto that meeting, and so every month we will sit down and talk about maintenance, look at some of the documentation of what's been done, in addition to talking about the capital and repair. We also have a city employee. He is a project manager that oversees capital projects at the Target Center. We're going to engage him more and really taking on more of an ownership of these maintenance and being more engaged. He works with AEG staff almost on a daily basis, and so making sure that that is a focus for him going forward. So we feel like, again, great information coming out of this audit where we can really sharpen the pencil and make sure that we're watching and that the community is getting a great return on its investment, as you noted. The Target Center is a great facility for Minneapolis. I think the renovation, I have not heard a negative thing as far as the build out itself and how it has really been put into action. And so we're very excited about where the Target Center can go. Even before the renovation, we knew that the Target Center brought over $100 million in economic impact to the city each year. And this renovation, this project itself, the Target Center sustains that and sustains that spending downtown. And so we're excited about that going into the future. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions about AEG? So it sounds like, Mr. Johnson, what you're saying is that you think that, yes, this investment has led to positive returns for the city in terms of the investments that we made to renovate in 2017?
Chair Palmisano, we own the building. The building was deteriorating and becoming a building that was not sustainable from a competition standpoint. And so we had to do something to protect that $100 million in economic investment. And so that was the real reason why this investment was made. And with that, we're able to keep basketball, both the Timberwolves and the Lynx in Minneapolis. Just this last weekend, 2 sold-out shows for Eric Church. Coming up here in a couple of weeks, 2 sold-out shows for Sir Elton John. Sorry that I didn't hit that one right. But again, a lot of activity. All of the high school tournaments that are coming up, this is a great resource for the community and a great thing for Minneapolis.
Thank you. All right. With that, I think we can go ahead and I'll make a motion to receive and file the AEG Contract Management Audit Report. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Also, I should have done this just together, but I also to direct staff to publish the report. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Director Bigby? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano, Audit Committee members. I wanted to take a moment to thank Jeff Johnson and Lori Johnson for speaking today. And I think they're a good example of how collaborative management teams can produce more efficient operations for the city. So their willingness to collect data and analyze data and having the expertise of finance contribute to the oversight of the AEG Target Center contract, I think is going to be a great thing going forward. So thank you.
Director, before we go into the next one, a question from the dais before we started today. Could you help us and the public just understand the difference between a full audit like we just did and what's coming next, which is a consult? Could you just help us
Sure.
delineate why we would do one thing versus another and that type of thing?
Sure. An audit is an independent and objective review of a process or a department's activities. There would be a specific objective and scope for the audit, and we would follow the planning, risk assessment, field work, and reporting processes as promulgated by professional standards. The difference in a consultation is that a consultation might be requested by management for a process that they're developing or a system that's being developed. Or they might want a review of a model or a framework. So it's a more specific target, generally a lighter lift from the audit department resources. And there's not necessarily audit issues that would come out of a consultation. There could be recommendations for management that don't require formal management responses. I'd like to note that there could be formal audit issues that come out of a consultation if audit detects that there are significant risks or gaps in the control environment that are not being adequately addressed. So would you like me to move to the consultation?
Yep, great.
We have our next report is our IET auditor performed a consultation for human resources separation timeliness with the Human Resources Department. So I'd like to introduce our IT auditor, Nikhil D'Souza from Backbone Consultants.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. D'Souza.
Good morning, Chair Palmisano, Audit Committee. Thank you, Director Bigby. As mentioned, this was a consultation on the timeliness of the separation process. To give you some background, a new process was put in using a tool called ServiceNow to basically track, manage, as well as request, manage, and track all of the termination access removals from the city network. This was put in November 2017, and it was deployed with the intent of minimizing the timeline between when a user's last day of access that's needed and data access was terminated. So the objective, of course, was to review the timeliness of when these accounts were disabled or removed from the city network.
Mr. D'Souza, a couple years ago, you helped the city complete another report about when employees left the city and how their last paycheck worked and that sort of thing. Could you help explain how this grew out of that, if in fact it did, or?
The core issue when we did that one was more around the timeliness aspect, which kind of drove the implementation of the ServiceNow tool to help streamline and make it more efficient and organize it. So yeah, this did come out of a previous review that was done on the HR processes, but our specific work was more around the timeliness of removal of access and not necessarily the payroll aspects.
I see, and I should have pointed this out in the beginning, but we do have our HR Director, Patience Ferguson, here with us as well, and so I invite Audit Committee members to perhaps direct questions or have a question. I'll try to direct it to the appropriate person. I apologize, I probably should have asked Patience to respond to that one, but go ahead, Mr. D'Souza.
That's good. So the scope and approach we took is we obtained the raw data from ServiceNow from the period of November 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2018. So we had 11 months worth of data to look at. We put it through a few of our analysis tools, and the results were, it took about 21 days, or 20.90 to be specific, on average for removal of access being submitted after the last day worked. So there are appendices in the back over here. If you want me to scroll to them, I can. But you will see that, maybe actually I will. As you can see, there's a big spike in the 1 and 2. So a lot of people are actually doing it on the same day. So it's not like the process is not working. It's just that there's a lot of on the negative side that makes the averages skew towards 21. So just to kind of bring that up. The other one is it takes about 14 and a half days from the time a ticket is created to when it is closed and the access is removed. So this is a huge improvement compared to what we had noted in the past. And in the past, we didn't even have clear data to do this analysis. So this new process has been really helpful in providing insight into the timeliness of removal of access for terminated employees. A couple of observations we noted is that the last day worked in ServiceNow does not necessarily equal their term date in human resources files, and the main reason for that is probably because of benefits expiration extending past the last day of work. And the other one we noted is that employee IDs were not consistently noted in the ServiceNow tickets. 59 out of the 643 tickets we looked at did not have an employee ID field in there. It's important to kind of put that in for multiple traceability and comparison for audit purposes, as well as completeness of the entire ServiceNow ticket. And the last thing we noted as an observation was the departments are not accurately entered into ServiceNow. We noted one employee was noted as the HR department, but they were actually part of the internal audit department. So we were able to identify some data inconsistencies, and that's why our recommendations were to make the employee ID a required field in ServiceNow for offboarding requests, so you can't even complete the ticket till you put the employee ID in. And another item we recommended is to do input quality checks or a direct feed from PeopleSoft HR that ties a person's department accurately together in the ticket so that we have a much better, higher quality of data to analyze.
If you'll pause just for a moment, we have a question for Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. D'Souza, two questions, actually. I don't know if you did the math, but on the computation of the average, that was the 20.9 days, do you suppose the median of that field is probably closer to single digits? I mean, it looks like most people did.
Yeah, if I don't know the median off the top of my head, but it would indicate based on statistics that I know of that it would be around the single digit dates. I'd say a bulk of that is in the single digits. There are some that go into the 11 to 17 mark, as you can see. So there are some stragglers out there, but overall, the process is working, and it is working a lot better than what we had. So.
Thank you. And the second question was, what happens at 20.9 days, that time period where someone is leaving but their access isn't turned off, right? That's what we're talking about. Was there evidence of access of persons accessing the system after their departure date?
That's a great question. Since this was a consultation, we stopped at just reviewing this.
Okay.
We didn't go into the network level data. We wanted to see how effective and efficient this new process is being put into place, and that would be the next organic outcome of the next audit would be more to dig down deeper into network-specific access. But it comes down to more of when's the actual employee's last working date. Is it the day their benefits end, or is it the day they're last physically working? And so that's some question that I think patients will be best suited to answer.
Because this answers the question of could it happen, but we didn't answer the question of did it happen. Right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. With that, I'll turn it over to patients for comments or questions.
Thank you. Director Ferguson. Director Ferguson, it sounds as though one of the questions that we have is there any indication that unauthorized or nefarious access has actually been attempted by people separated before their credentials are closed out? It sounds like we don't really know the answer to that question.
And some of that is Deputy CFO Johnson and I were just talking. Some of that also has to do with the whole vacation payout. And so that is part of why you may see some of that.
Okay. It also seems that 21 days on average for removal of access is a bit long. Did you want to comment on that?
Well, I do think that this is still a marked improvement over what we had previously. And some of you may or may not know this is going from a manual process to a digital process. And it's also about taking a much more enterprise-wide approach, which we did not have before. Now, there's some other things that we're also doing to even streamline this even more. We have a work group comprised of various people within the enterprise that's really looking at even moving us more toward a digital, what we're calling a digital workforce. And so we're hoping that some of the kinds of improvements that we're having across departments is actually going to help drive this to be more efficient. And what prompted that work group is, quite frankly, because we are going to be we're in the process of moving to another building, and we want to make sure that we're having a much more efficient process in place, that we are not having as much paper. We're going to go to more of a paperless system. And so we're hoping that those kinds of things that we're doing will help even drive that even more to be a much more streamlined process and also reduce some of the time.
Thank you. Do you think the digital workforce that you're setting up, do you think that would help drive consistency in how people are enabled or allowed to take vacation past their end date? Would that create a common way of doing that? Because it seems very different based on what department you are in.
You know, that's a good question, and I don't know if I have an answer for that, quite frankly. I think that that is one of the pain points, quite frankly, in the city, is around this whole piece around vacations, as you know, and many of you know. And I think that that was in part what has helped to raise this up, is that we are now seeing and having data. We have documentation that shows that that isn't being consistent, as opposed to anecdotal data that was much more manual driven. And I think at some point we're going to have to make a decision as an enterprise, because that is, I think, one of the huge pain points around this whole piece around vacations.
I would invite my colleagues to look back to that audit. It was a few years ago, but it was about employee separations. Mr. Neal, did you have a question or comment? One question: if we do consider, if we are able to correct the employee ID field for all the offboarding tickets, if we did have employee IDs in all of them, how exactly would that address some of the issues identified? I guess maybe that's not the right question for you, but
Yeah, I
I'd
would
invite
defer to-
Nikhil,
Yeah.
Mr. D'Souza, to help us understand that a little bit better. If the employee ID field was filled, how would that change things?
Sure, Chair Palmisano, Audit Committee members. Having the employee ID field completed and filled in helps us to correlate the ServiceNow data to the HR file data in PeopleSoft based on employee ID, so we have an accurate match compared to doing it by first name, last name, which may result in a potential discrepancy because we could have multiple folks with potentially the same name. So it helps maintain a unique identifier in order to help provide that link between PeopleSoft HR and the ServiceNow system.
Thank you. Question or comment from Commissioner Meyer?
Thank you. Could you turn to Appendix D? I just wanted to know, there's some major outliers, and I was just curious if there was something in particular about vacation policy or something else for communications, CPED, and Public Works, which have averages over 100 days. Do you want to?
Councilmember, Jim Meyer, just to let you know, one of the reasons why I called out here is that departments are not accurately entered in ServiceNow tickets.
Those are misentered?
Yeah, so we are not sure how many of those are misentered or how many of those are accurate. That's the other issue as to why we wanted an automated sync. Yeah,
And the
quality.
quality check.
And then on the flip side, for outliers in the opposite direction, why are some of these negative?
Because they're doing it before the actual termination date. They're submitting the tickets much in advance, knowing that, hey, this person's going to leave. So they're actually being proactive. So those are better.
Excuse me, Chair Palmisano, Audit Committee members, Deb Parker can also speak to some of the technicalities behind those accounts.
Sure. I invite Ms. Parker.
Hi, I'm Deb Parker. I'm the Director of Security Services in IT. Some of those outliers that you see are cleanup from several years of accounts issued, especially in Public Works it happens, that are either never used, and if we don't get any, if IT doesn't get an offboarding request or any kind of notification that that person is gone, we don't have a way of turning it off because we don't know for sure. So we've been doing audits. My team has been doing audits over the last year to clean up a lot of those. So I think what you're seeing now is evidence of when we discover one of these abandoned accounts, we close it out, we run it through an offboarding process just to make sure that everything else is turned off that needs to be turned off besides just network access. So that's, I think, where some of those longitudinal averages come from.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Ferguson and Mr. D'Souza. I also wanted to mention that Director Ferguson has a data analytics person, and they're developing their data analytics capabilities. So we're very excited for the improved control environment in the future. So thank you again very much.
Great. If you could just pause and let us receive and file this HR separation consult report. I'll go ahead and move that forward. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. We next have another consultation, the Park Board body-worn camera compliance readiness review. SOLOT will come up and speak to the why we're doing this consultation. And then I'd also like to note in our audience we have Chief Ojado and Lieutenant Noble who will speak to the consultation.
Thank you. I'll also just point out, thank you, Lieutenant Noble, Chief Ojado, for being with us this morning. We'll give you a chance to speak and answer any questions as they come up. Ms. Esolat.
All right. Chair Palmisano, committee members, I'm going to present now a summary of our consultation of the Park Board body-worn camera compliance readiness. This was requested by the Park Board Police as they wanted to make sure that they were ready for an upcoming audit in 2020. And through this consultation, we wanted to assess the Park Board Police readiness to demonstrate compliance with state statutes 13.825, portable recording systems, and 626.8473, portable recording system adoption written policy required. So the scope of this consultation included a review of the written body-worn camera program policy to assess its completeness, the body-worn camera video and audio recording data classification and retention, the maintenance of required data related to the body-worn camera program, and the processes for redaction, data request handling, and data access and security. And as a result of this consultation, we noted opportunities to enhance the body-worn camera policy and improve monitoring controls to better prepare for the biennial audit that's upcoming. And because this is a consultation, we communicated all the results, the detail of the results with the auditee, and we'll actually turn it over to them to speak to the process and what we learned from it.
Thank you. Welcome, Chief Ohado.
Chair Palmisano, committee members, first, I want to say thank you. We asked the audit department to provide this consultation in anticipation of our biennial audit that will take place the end of 2019 or early 2020, and they were extremely helpful. So first, thank you for supporting their work, and Director Bigby, thank you to your team for the work that you put into this. We learned a lot from the consultation, so 2018 was the Park Board's first year of implementing body cameras. In 2017, we went through the community engagement process and the policy development and implemented body cameras in January of 2018. So over the last year, we've successfully implemented body cameras. We saw an opportunity after that first year of implementation to review our policy based on lessons learned from MPD and as best practices evolve around body cameras. We've implemented a lot of those best practices. A few of the opportunities that we have are around quality assurance and managing data practices. In the Park Board, data practice requests actually don't come through the police department. They're handled by the Deputy Superintendent's office. So it's just making sure that those processes are aligned both in the Deputy Superintendent's office and with the Park Police Department, and then bolstering our quality assurance.
Thank you. I also want to point out that it was your interim superintendent last year who also helped us to prioritize this audit over some others. So thank you to Mary. Questions, thoughts? Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Chief Ohado, for being proactive on this. So I have several questions. For the recommendations, the second one says, add a change to the log, to the policy to summarize key changes. How often are policy changes being made? And these are being made by you, or?
Yes, Commissioner Meyer. So we're constantly considering policy changes around body cameras based on, because this technology is so new and the laws are relatively new, there are continual interpretations and updates made by the legislature. So leading up to body camera implementation in 2018, there were significant changes around data practices in 2016 and 2017 through the legislature that sort of led us to the policy that we have. At the time that we drafted that policy, we believed that that was a model policy. But as body cameras have become more common in law enforcement, and we have had the opportunity to learn through implementation, we saw after a year of implementation that it was a good time to review our policy and make some updates. I don't know that we will review that policy every year going forward. It might be an every 2-year review, But it is important that we make sure that we're complying with the law and we're following best practices.
And so for the recommendation, I assume that changes were being made without logging them before, but was it, I'm just wondering what the context of the recommendation was. Maybe that's something the guy could speak to.
So we did a comparison of policy requirements and practices that the park board police are currently doing, and we didn't make that publicly available in this audit report because management is not yet required to comply with the policy. They will have their first audit coming up soon. So we're giving them some ideas and some things to tighten down their processes and close some control gaps. And part of that is building out their policies and making sure they're comprehensive enough. They will be expected to actually comply with all the requirements at the time that they're required to have the audit. Does that answer your question, Audit Committee Member Meyer?
Well, I guess not, because I'm just wondering, like, but so that's something that you could maybe talk about non-publicly. Is that what you're saying?
I think so.
Okay.
And I don't have it at my fingertips. I don't have all of the identified areas where they could make improvements, but I can certainly get back to you if that would be okay.
Yeah, I saw that it mentioned on there that detailed audit comments are provided to the Park Board Police. Would those detailed comments be available to committee members?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
For the other recommendation, you recommended that testing should include sampling events where body-worn camera recordings are expected to ensure the equipment was activated. I was curious about that one because one of the things I would be most interested in knowing is, first of all, if there's compliance, like, are they being activated when they should be? And I wonder if advance notice might change things, like, and miss some problems that would happen if we sampled randomly.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to speak to that, Chief Otto?
Sure. Commissioner Meyer, you're speaking to the quality assurance part of this body-worn camera program. And all of our indications is that our compliance with policy is extremely high. We are working to more formalize how we do quality assurance and finding a good way to go in and randomly sample incidents to make sure that officers are following the policy appropriately. We are struggling a little bit with the amount of work that sort of quality assurance takes, having limited staff available to do that sort of work.
And then going back to the scope, it talks about the processes for data access and security and data classification and retention, and I didn't see any recommendations that pertain to that, so I'm just assuming that there weren't any red flags that came up.
Commissioner Meyer, that's right. Anything that you don't see any recommendations about is because it's covered in the policy, and we think they'll be good if an audit happens.
Okay.
Yep.
And then for the audit that's coming up, is that an audit that you'll be doing? Is it because it says an independent one? You count as independent, right?
Chief Otto's decision.
Oh.
So, Commissioner Meyer, Chair Palmisano, it is our desire to have the internal audit department do that biennial audit. We've talked a little bit about work plans coming up for the end of 2019 and into 2020, and we would very much appreciate that support.
Okay. Thank you so much for doing this. I would like to receive the detailed comments when you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this question is from Ms. Bigby, and you may have already answered it just a second ago, but I'm going to pose it on behalf of our colleague, Committee Member Fisher, who's ill and unable to be here today. But it's on the back, in the second page of your letter to us, you note internal audit noted opportunities to enhance the park board body-worn camera policy, et cetera. What are the opportunities? Are those opportunities listed in those two bullets below, or are the opportunities listed in the other items that you've provided to the Park Board Police to review it? Which, or is it all of that?
Good question. Chair Palmisano, Audit Committee members. I wanted to also reiterate that we didn't do detailed transaction testing. We just did a high-level review of the policy for policy compliance, so we didn't actually test footage, which we would do in a full audit. So the opportunities for enhancement or any gaps that we noted are in the spreadsheet that we sent to management. So for obvious reasons, before they actually have their audit, we didn't want to make that public. We didn't notice any glaring deficiencies, but we couldn't really comment on security because we didn't actually test transactions or test systems. So I think there were a couple of opportunities where we noticed some gaps with the policy. In most aspects, it was an area where we thought they substantially complied with the policy requirement, but we noted it's a few additional things that they might want to do to fully comply. There were only maybe two instances where there was a piece of the policy where we didn't see that there was compliance noted in the Park Board Police body-worn camera policy.
Okay, thank you.
Does that? Okay.
Yes, it does.
Are there any other questions or comments? All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Fajardo and Lieutenant Noble. Thank you, Huguette.
Thank you. With that, I will move to receive and file this compliance readiness consult report. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Next, we have the integrated rolling audit plan. Director Bigby?
Okay. I am going to, then I'll come back to the work in progress. I'll skip down to that one. So we are trying to convert our annual updates to the audit plan into a rolling audit plan. Is this the part that you're on, Chair Palmisano? Okay. So today we have a pretty big ask for adding audits and consultations to our audit plan. The way this goes out 7 quarters. And then going forward, every time we close audits or consultations, we would ask to have a few more things added to the audit plan based on our department resources. So our audit plan will always look forward about 7-8 quarters or so. So a little background. The City of Minneapolis is required by professional standards to update the audit plan at least annually. A big part of that process is talking to city leaders, management, department directors. So we conducted interviews starting about a year ago, and then when I came on board, I started meeting with city council members, audit committee members, most recently wrapping up with department director meetings. In addition, when we attend other committee meetings or have other conversations with management, if we note risks, we track them in a workbook that we have. To keep up with emerging risks and concerns from management. And I will talk about some of the other factors that go into this risk assessment process. When we talk about risk with management, they are not all familiar with the same terminology. So we approached conversations with management by talking about risks in risk buckets. So we talk about financial risk, which is pretty obvious, I think. Compliance could be compliance with contracts or other regulations or laws that apply to that program or activity. Operational risk is the risk that your department or your program's goals and objectives will not be met. Information technology risk is anything anything pertaining to the availability, security of data. Cybersecurity risk is risks of keeping our systems and our databases and our employees safe from external electronic hacking or other unauthorized access. Public health and safety could impact, I think that would be significant for the Park Board and other activities that deal with the public works, CPED, health department. And then strategic risks are the city council, the mayor's goals and objectives. Are there risks that those strategic objectives will not be met? Are our programs designed to carry those out effectively? There are other key factors that are important for prioritizing city risks. It includes the probability and impact of an adverse event for the relevant risk categories. So when we talk to management and identify key risks, now we have to measure that risk so we can have an overall citywide view. So a way that we measure risk is talking about how likely is it that something will go wrong and that there will be an adverse event. And then if something did go wrong, what is the impact? So you have the likelihood, low to high, and the impact, low to high. And it's very subjective, but it still gives you a basis for measuring things and prioritizing. The department program or budget plays a role. How much money are we spending towards achieving these objectives? Prior and current audit coverage and identified issues. So once we have some risks identified, has there been any audit coverage? External, internal, there could be consultants that did some work in that area, and identified issues could be audit issues, state auditor issues, issues from external consultants that were hired. State auditor findings, I mentioned that. Internal and external complaints, including fraud, waste, and abuse, is pretty significant. A significant number of incidents of fraud are identified through tips. So we need to monitor complaints and fraud tips that come in, and what activities and programs are those related to. The strength of the existing control environment. If we know that there are significant weaknesses in the control environment and the impact is pretty high, that's going to increase the risk of the likelihood that there will be audits in that area. The maturity of management's risk assessment and risk management activities. This is a new development, I think, in the city. The private sector has a more mature risk management layer. But one example of risk management at the city would be the internal controls team that has identified and inventoried financial controls, and now they're implementing testing of those controls. Once that matures, then internal audit can do limited testing of that process, and that's a lighter lift from internal audit resources. In addition, the Park Board is an example. The Park Board is planning on designing a risk assessment program. And once that matures and is robust, then internal audit can do sample testing of the Park Board's risk assessment processes and management action plans. It offers a much more thorough coverage of risk citywide. So it's very exciting to see these processes develop in the city. Another factor that weighs on the risk assessment process is management's plans to implement key programs or key systems. So it is advantageous to involve internal audit as things are being developed. That way, if we notice some significant gaps or risks that aren't addressed, you can address those before you actually implement your program or system. It's a lot more efficient to address those things up front than to have to roll back and redo something later.
Thank you, Director Bigby. I think we're about to see that in the PIMS audit coming up. But could you give us an example of how internal audit could update the risk assessment during the year and how it would impact an audit plan?
Sure. Chair Palmisano, audit committee members. That's a great question. To give you a picture of what that would look like on an ongoing basis, an example would be an investigation. And let's assume that as the result of the investigation, we noticed a significant deficiency in a computer system. And then we noticed that this deficiency impacted multiple departments. So we could either do a consultation with management to fix that and make sure that all risks have been addressed, or management can say, that's okay, we don't need your help, we're going to fix it ourselves, and then we would put it on the audit plan as being a significant risk and something that we need to make sure is closed in the future. So that's one way. As things happen over time and there are emerging risks, if that rises high enough in our risk assessment overall, then we would add it to the audit plan, either as an audit or as a consultation.
So there's still the ability for our audit committee to go and bring things to you and ask you to prioritize them
Yes.
as well.
And then whether we can either push back or delay some audits that are on the plan, or we can remove some audits that are on the audit plan. We would just need to be able to defend why we're doing that in our overall risk assessment process. We could also add to plan, keeping everything the same, and hire additional resources.
Are there any questions? Okay. I do want to point out that Mr. Fisher, who can't be here this morning, did offer this. As you know, he teaches at the law school. He says he's prepared many risk management plans, and he teaches this method of doing so at the law school and the law schools in which he is taught. So he says he fully approves of the design and approach as submitted by Director Bigby. I too am inclined to support this. It seems like a more organic, natural way to be planning the work of our very small but powerful audit department. Are there thoughts, questions, other ideas? Okay. Are you through with this part of the presentation? Okay.
Not yet.
Go ahead and continue.
Thank you. I'll just quickly go through these. I wanted to note that we also included IT risks. So our IT auditor, Nikhil D'Souza, gave us, he performed an IT risk assessment and gave us the results, and we integrated those into our overall audit plan. And I wanted to mention that I'm now calling it an integrated audit plan because really all of our audits should consider IT risks, and depending on whether our audit staff internally can address some of those risks or whether we need to put the bulk of the work in Nikhil's bucket, depends on how we allocate the hours then in the audit. After we considered IT risks, we benchmarked with other local governments to make sure we didn't miss any key risks that other governments are also addressing. And the pace of the audits that we're adding are based upon our current resources. We can speed things up if we either hire consultants or add to the audit team, or we can keep the pace that we've planned. And then I think we already mentioned this. So this is a very high-level inherent risk heat map for the city. Because the heat map can get very busy, we didn't break down departments by their key functions, although it is broken down in more detail in our workbook. I wanted to mention that we added succession planning, which of course is not a department or a program, but it's a thematic issue that's impacting all city departments. And even though we've talked about it, HR has addressed this significantly over the last couple of years. We still see it impacting in an adverse way our departments today. So we want to make sure that management is thinking about this as we go into our audits and other projects. So having it on the heat map is just a reminder for us that every time we do an audit, make sure we address this risk.
Ms. Bigby,
Yes.
Director Bigby, did you get the department's input in coming up with this heat map, or is this audit's assessment of where they lie on an impact probability scale?
Just on this heat map itself, we passed it by departments for feedback and nobody asked for any adjustments. What is behind the heat map is all based on management department discussions and then the other inputs that I mentioned, current audits and that sort of thing. I wanted to mention that just because an area is in high risk, such as police, this is inherent risk, it doesn't mean that management is ineffective. So police could have very effective management and control environment, but it's still going to be inherently a risky activity. So just wanted to mention that. This is not a reflection of management effectiveness. This is strictly inherent risk.
Commissioner Meyer?
The park board is higher on there than I would anticipate. It's something not intrinsically risky, I wouldn't think. Can you speak to that one?
Well, we think about patron safety, the police activity, aquatic safety, which ended up on our audit plan this year. So what are things that could go wrong and result in loss of life, for example? That inherently is risky. So that's why it's higher up. And then the park board's risk assessment program, potential program, is a great way to provide coverage, I think, and assurance to the park board that they're covering and looking at those risks. Any other questions so far?
Thank you. I think that you've really hit the nail on the head in terms of succession planning, in terms of the employee makeup and the aging workforce that we have here. That's the only category, well, that and extreme weather events are kind of the two separate categories that seem to span the city enterprise. Higher than 911 is the city clerk's office. Could you also comment on that? Mm-hmm. Or sorry, the probability is higher, not the impact.
Mm-hmm. So did you want me to comment on the extreme weather? Bob?
No, could you comment on the city clerk's office?
Oh, okay.
I think we all get the extreme weather piece.
I'm just going to see. So I think one thing that makes the city clerk higher than maybe they would like is the whole responsibility for data governance specific to record retention. And we have a consultation in progress right now for record retention. We have the state of the data report that the city clerk is responsible for, and those right now are all open audit issues that need to be addressed. The city clerk is doing a wonderful job addressing these issues, but we still have a lot of work to do. And we're estimating that there's significant risk in that area. And we know the likelihood of things going wrong are pretty high because we don't have good controls in place right now to ensure that everything is going to work properly.
To their adage, nothing works without the clerks. It is interesting, and an anecdotal story that has been shared with me by our city clerk is that in some other cities, they've gone through exercises of what are the essential functions, and the city clerk's office in those other cities has become one of the top most essential functions. And it wouldn't often be seen that, I think, by the public until you understand that they're responsible for the data of our city. So,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the result, the outcome of the risk assessment update. The first few items on here, I won't go into detail. We'll talk about those later. These are existing items on the audit plan. So what I'm showing you now is our entire audit plan. Page 2 is the first page that has some items. If it says remove, there is one item we're asking to remove, which is the Fleet Services Division consultation. Originally, we were going to work with Public Works on designing a new model for managing their fleet services. However, after speaking with Public Works Director Robin Hutchinson, they've already implemented this process. So they designed their model and implemented a new process. So this specific consultation, we are going to remove from the audit plan. Then the next few things are we have 14 audits that we would like to add to the audit plan, and they are lined up according to quarter and based on what we think our resources can cover. So the first one is the Park Board Enterprise Risk Management Program. They have asked for internal audits consultation, just a little help in training and getting it rolled out, possibly piloting their first 1 or 2 divisions or programs with them, and then management would own it and go forward with it after that. Also, the Public Works 311 sidewalk, snow and ice removal. We've had many complaints and much interest from City Council. So after talking with Public Works and 311, we think we identified where some key problems were in responding to sidewalk, snow and ice removal complaints. So we actually will start our first information gathering session with our IT auditor next week. Contract amendments is an important review we've been queuing up, and we think because of risk we will put that sooner on the audit plan. And this would involve reviewing contract amendments over a period of years and determining whether those amendments were proper or whether some of them were to get low bidding and then increase the price of a contract through amendments. The next one is the follow-up to the MPD, the Minneapolis Police Department Equity and Recruiting Review. The first one we're doing now is from the beginning of the application process through hire. Then we've been asked to do a follow-up review, which we think will be a great consultation. Once somebody is hired into the MPD department, what is the data showing how they progress throughout their careers? So we just want to look at demographics, who's getting dropped, who's leaving, and who's getting promoted, and roll that up to a dashboard. I think you'll be able to visualize that better once we finish the first review and see the dashboard. We have a few data sets done already, and the whole project will be done in about 2 weeks. Then for the second review, the dashboard would be similar, but it would be post-hire. And then, of course, the purpose is if we see data showing things that we don't expect, how can the police adjust their policies to make it a more equitable process?
Director Bigby,
Yes.
Originally, I thought we were on point to have the audit that we're in progress with MPD come up this audit meeting. Are you confident that it will be ready for the next audit committee meeting?
Yes, Chair Palmisano, audit committee members, we have, there was a delay because of resources to do the data entry. So it turned out that all of the data is manual for every class, so hundreds of applicants for every class for 11 data sets, I believe. And we started with 1 or 2 resources, and it took 8 to 15 hours per data set to enter the data into a database to do these analytics. So that's another problem, is having manual data. It's very hard to report on it in a timely manner. We now have acquired additional resources, and HR is managing the project. IT is managing the data analytics and the dashboard, and they have committed to February 20th for completing the data set entry. And then the dashboard is pretty quick after that.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Data Lake IT General Controls consultation is designed to help IT while they have a data lake that's already rolled out. It's still being developed. They're adding new data all the time. We want to make sure that that data is properly secured. So our basic IT controls in place and operating effectively. Revenue and collections is designed to start later this year. The finance department is implementing a new process to centralize revenue and collections. Rather than doing a consultation, they preferred to develop the program and pilot it, and then we are coming in to do an audit later this year once they've implemented the new process. Water network integration consultation is a follow-up to the IT audit from last year. There's a system change expected, so this consultation is to ensure that proper security controls are in place. The next add we are asking for is procurement ABC system post-implementation user access management review. This is the new automated platform for procurement bidding, and management has asked us to come in and do their user access roles and reviews later this year. They just went live, actually I think they're going live today, February 11th, and they want time to fix any bugs and follow their complaints for a little while and make sure that they have their user access roles and responsibilities in place and operating effectively. Then we'll come in and do our audit. The next add is municipal ID privacy IT general controls. Assuming this program continues to roll out, this will be a great opportunity for IT audit to be involved early on and identify any potential gaps in controls before the program is rolled out. Security incident event monitoring review is an IT audit. After discussions with management, we'd like to queue that up for 2020 Q2. Park Board patron safety audit, aquatics specifically, Q2 2020. Geographic information system governance and IT general controls, Q3 2020. Contract audit, that is designed to, similar to the AEG Target Center contract, we will pick one of our high-risk contracts to be the next audit. We don't know what that one will be yet. And then the last item on here is the body-worn camera compliance audit. We'd like to save a spot for Park Board specifically. and possibly Minneapolis Police Department. We're not sure if we will do their audit or if they will hire an external party. And we will know exactly what quarter as soon as we hear back from Park Board.
Thank you. Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Bigby, by my count, there are 14 adds and 1 remove.
Correct.
That seems like a lot.
That is.
And is this, do you think that's possible?
Chair Palmisano, council members, audit committee members, committee member Neal. The reason why there's so many added right now is because we had been doing an annual risk assessment where we would add on audits for the next year. So this is our time to add on. We're currently in our last audit that was on the prior audit plan, but we are adding more audits. So we're not going out just 1 year, we're going out almost 2 years. Okay. And then from now on, we would only be adding as we close audits and consultations.
Okay. So it's not likely that we'll see another graphic like this with 14 adds and
Nope.
1 remove in the future, because it's going to be rolling forward on a more incremental basis probably.
There should be 0 to 4 at any given time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Chair Palmisano, audit committee members, we are asking, as committee member Neal mentioned, 1 item removed and 14 items added to the audit plan.
Super. So this would change our current yearly work plan to the integrated rolling audit plan. Are there any other questions or concerns? I already said my piece earlier. All right. I did want to take separate and specific action on this instead of just having it roll up into the rest of the report. So I'd like to move to approve the integrated rolling audit plan. And then we'll continue this method going forward. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you for this work.
Thank you.
Next, we have our regular auditor update report, as we do every cycle. And then we will look to potentially adjourn for a closed session piece.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Palmisano, audit committee members. Please stop me if you have any questions. I think I'll quickly try to go through the consultations in progress and get to our audit issue follow-up. This is just a quick graphic of audits, consultations, continuous monitoring, and investigations in progress. Our grant management audit is in progress. As a reminder, the objective is to review grant management processes citywide to determine whether they are adequate and ensure grant compliance. We've completed our key walkthroughs for the planning. Our scope memo is to be distributed later February. The scope memo is generally distributed 1 to 2 weeks before field work can begin. So we expect to begin field work the first week of March. We may report April audit committee, but if not April, it'll probably be the following audit committee. The Park Board risk assessment and management consultation would like to meet with Park Board, with Jennifer Ringgold, I believe the deputy superintendent, would like to meet with us in March to talk about planning and walk through some examples. And I think she's preparing a presentation for the Park Board Commission. Records management consultation, we've combined CPED and Public Works because it has evolved into a bigger citywide process, which is great. We had our last meeting was last week, and they are management is deciding which oversight committee would be best to drive this. So we have the planning to move to the new facility, managing records and files, understanding data classification, getting resources to scan files, implementing the right record retention policies. Then citywide, we also need to oversee those processes on an ongoing basis, not just for preparing to move. Equity and MPD recruiting data analysis, we just talked about that. So we expect February 20th for all the data entry to be complete. Then we'll have the dashboard ready and we can summarize our findings. Neighborhood and community relations, NCR is working with the city coordinator to finalize their 2020 program. Our internal audit consult looked specifically at their audit policy. So how does NCR audit the neighborhood associations that receive funds? And we also wanted to see a finance policy implemented where neighborhood associations must agree to having a proper control environment for handling their funds received by the city. The finance policy is still in draft, so I'm not ready to close this consultation. If management decides to not implement finance policies, then internal audit can close the consultation and we could queue it up for an audit later on. So we just want to make sure some key risks that we've identified are addressed.
So Director Bigby, my understanding is that feedback is being asked on the 2020 draft plan, I think through the end of March. After that, there will be more of a rewrite. I'm not on that particular committee, but what I heard from NCR staff was that then there will be a rewrite, then it will be adopted by City Council. So are you saying you would need to wait until the end of that to come up with a protocol, or it would become part of the package that comes before City Council?
Possibly. I think we could close out the consultation sooner if we saw the finance policies were developed and part of the program. I don't imagine the city coordinator would remove that part of the program. I think everybody is looking for strong controls to ensure our money is spent appropriately, money that is given to neighborhood associations. So specifically related to the audit policy and controls to minimize the risk of fraud, waste, and abuse, once we're confident those controls are in place, then I think we can close our consultation. If it has to wait for that final 2020 plan, then it may stay open until then. Results Minneapolis is ongoing. We most recently reviewed CPED metrics and provided feedback to the Results Minneapolis team. We're going to keep this consultation open until any programs that are queued up have gone through the process. We have none others in the queue at the moment. Enterprise complaint management processes. We most recently benchmarked with other local governments and had a cross-functional stakeholder meeting to discuss those benchmarks, what other cities are doing. There's not a lot of centralization in complaint management with cities of our size, although 2 local governments do have a very efficient and streamlined centralized complaint management process. So now management has to decide on the pros and cons of centralizing or not centralizing complaint management, what that will look like, and whether we need a new system to handle those complaints. Internal audit will still monitor the risks of not having a centralized complaint management process. There are other mitigating controls that can be put in place with a decentralized process, and management will continue internal audit will continue monitoring until we're sure those key risks are addressed. Are there any questions on work in progress? Okay. Prior audit issue follow-up. Internal auditor Travis Com is going to give you an update on prior audit issues.
Thank you. Mr. Com.
Chair Palmisano, committee members, I'm just here to provide a quick update on our efforts to close up prior audit issues and the results of those. So just kind of some summary statistics. We currently have 29 open audit issues. We've closed 17 audit issues since the last time, and we have 29 that we currently call validation progress, which I'll touch on in a couple of slides, as well as we do have 11 audit issues expected to close in the next quarter. And then just some stats from the last couple of audit committee meetings. We do not have any overdue audit issues. Our management has been very proactive and receptive to working kind of close out and providing details and support for the audit issues. And I'd also like to point out, we also like to recognize management and finance for the work in closing out an audit issue from the payroll audit. Issue number 1, payroll register, is not reconciled to the general ledger early and ahead of schedule as well. So these next couple of slides, we have a summary detail of the current open audit issues, the 29 of them. Most of them, as well as the issue rating, as well as the issue due date. So most of the issues, the risk are currently identified as moderate, and they are expected to close in the next quarter to the end of 2019. And then here's just kind of the summary last detail of that. We did add the ones today, the audit issues from the reports presented today on there as well, and the current expected due dates. And then kind of issue evaluation in progress. This is ones that management has to submit a report support for in the form of documentation, receipts, invoices, kind of asserting that they resolved the current audit issue and that progress has been made on it. And then once that progress, once we get that information, we go through and kind of make sure we validate, we do some tests and make sure that the audit issue has been satisfactorily remediated and that there's no the risk identifying the audit issue is closed out thoroughly. So it's kind of a process, and that's why there's currently 29 of them in progress, because there's kind of work through them and work with management if the evidence is not sufficient or if there's kind of other issues, and making sure that the results are fair enough that we can satisfactorily close them out. And then so we can, there's a current, so the 17 closed audit issues all went through this process, and we expect these in the next couple of weeks, and kind of as we continue through to be able to close up many of these audit issues by next audit committee meeting. And then there's most of the issue ratings are also moderate. There is one highest issue, the segregation of duties, pay to process audit that we are currently validating. But other than that, those are all there. As well as we do, in this past period, we closed out 2 audits completely, construction contract and the HR file maintenance and retention audit. And we do expect a number of audits, including application security review, the IT program and project management consult, MPT property evidence room, police body cameras, CPED, loan cycle, as well as a few others to be able to completely closed out by the next time audit committee as we validate the evidence. So that's all I have for the audit issues, and I will now stand for questions.
Any thoughts or questions? I have one. I want to point out that an issue rating of moderate is significant, and in the private sector that would there'd be a lot of questions and comments from people in management on that. I see a significant decrease in the number of open audit issues since last fall, so can you comment on that?
Yeah, so we kind of, in the past couple months, we've been working to proactively follow up with management and really working on making sure that, kind of working through the process and making sure that they understand that they have audit issues and kind of how they can go about remediating them, as well as just kind of being about tracking them in the track as soon as they come up and making sure that we're sending constant reminders, like just kind of getting that constant feedback, which is kind of something that we've been working on in the past couple of months.
Thank you for your attention to it.
And I'll pass it off to Danny Hunt.
Ms. Hunt?
Chair Palmisano, can you hear me? Chair Palmisano, Audit Committee members, good morning. My name is Danny Hunt, and I am an internal audit intern. Following our internal audit issues update, we provide an update on state auditor open issues. The city's 2017 comprehensive annual financial report, external audit performed by the Office of the State Auditor, resulted in the following issues. The state auditor is in the process of reviewing the status of these issues and will provide an update when the review is complete. The open issues are monitoring of internal controls. Finance has indicated that internal controls and procedures have been documented and the testing of controls phase has begun. Issue number 2, prior period adjustment. Finance corrected the prior period adjustment in April 2018. And is in the process of reviewing their policies and procedures for the preparation of its financial statements. Issue number 3, withholding affidavit for contractors. This issue is still in progress. And issue 4, the uniform guidance written procurement policies and procedures. Finance has updated the relevant policies and procedures. However, this issue is still in progress. Next. We have the 2017 State Auditor Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board CAFR audit identified one new finding related to internal control over financial reporting and one reoccurring finding related to federal grant cash management and reporting requirements. The first issue relates to management practices. capital projects, the capital projects accountant that was agreed upon in the plan to address this issue is now on site, and the finance department is making progress towards better management practices related to capital projects. And the second issue relates to federal grants and the accounting of associated income and expenditures. The finance department is making progress towards remediating the federal grants, cash management, and reporting requirements. Any questions?
There aren't. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm going to refer back to Director Bigby.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. I think I will turn it back over to Ms. Hunt for our final slide, the internal department updates. Danny?
Chair Palmisano, Audit Committee members. So we have a staffing update. Internal Audit has one open full-time position available. Interviews will continue next week, and we hope to fill the position very soon. We are ongoing our city-wide risk assessment activities, which are, here we go. All departments and programs are under the purview of internal audit, so we're still reviewing and informing our rolling audit plan. We also have emerging risks, which include economic trends and other conditions that could impact the ability of our city to function as intended. And some example of these emerging risks include succession planning, as mentioned, labor shortage, federal government shutdown, data security, scarce resources, broadband technology, preparedness to meet future pension and benefit liabilities. As far as our policies and procedures, department policies and procedures updates are complete and will be reviewed again at least annually. Director Bigby, thank you. Oh, any questions? No. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. Chair Palmisano, Audit Committee members, that wraps up the auditor update.
Thank you. I appreciate that since we haven't, in lieu of having more regular meetings, we have very substantive meetings. So thank you to my colleagues for letting us do this robust update. Certainly a lot of work has been happening in your department. I'm going to move to receive and file this update. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Before we go on to the last topic, I just want to make a brief announcement. I'm pleased to share that the mayor's office has indicated their intent to extend Mr. David Fisher's appointment. So Mr. David Fisher will be reappointed to our audit committee. He's the mayor's appointee. So thank you for indulging me that. The next item on the agenda is the Police Information Management System, also known as PIMS IT Security Audit Report. I'm going to ask Managing City Attorney Susan Trammell to please explain the reason why the meeting could be closed to discuss this agenda item.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. The Open Meeting Law, Chapter 13D.05, Subdivision 3, Parens D, permits the closure of a meeting to receive security briefings and reports, to discuss issues related to security systems, to discuss emergency response procedures, and to discuss security deficiencies in or recommendations regarding public services, infrastructure, and facilities, if disclosure of the information discussed would pose a danger to public safety or compromise security procedures or responses. Before closing a meeting under this paragraph, the public body, in describing the subject to be discussed, must refer to the facilities, systems, procedures, services, or infrastructures to be considered during the closed meeting.
Thank you. So I move to adjourn to room 315, which is right across the way here, for the purpose of a closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute, Chapter 13D.05, Subdivision 3D, to receive the Police Information Management System IT Security Audit Report and discuss the contents thereof. Are there any questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion having been passed by unanimous consent, the committee will adjourn to room 315 to the closed session for the receipt of this final audit. Thank you.
Thank you.